So in the emerging city, digital sensors are obviously not just scattered nodes of hardware, but are bundled into infrastructures that remake these systems and the practices that they animate. So these digital infrastructures variously constitute the smart city, and from smart grids to connected devices and smartphones, we can say that they are creating a form of smartness or intelligence that is about the connections that are meant to unfold through these modes of connectivity that are often described as seamless modes of connectivity that are focused on a kind of automaticity of systems, infrastructure, and people. So a kind of city that is unfolding without a glitch and is sort of hyper-efficient. So today I want to look at how these sensor technologies and smart city initiatives are being implemented and how these modes of environmental sensing influence urban experience. And I'm going to specifically look at an example in London, as this is a city that's frequently referred to as one of the smartest cities worldwide, to just think about how these kinds of technologies are materialized. So this is the book from which the presentation is taken, and I'm drawing out some very particular arguments around intelligence today, although the chapter is kind of much longer, to look specifically at withness as a concept for how intelligence unfolds through certain kinds of participation. So withness, here following Whitehead, is a concept that signals both modes of being and becoming together, of concressing such that possibilities for both urban engagement as well as speculative urban futures are undertaken. Withness raises the question of how we possess the world, become together, not exclusively as a kind of individual actor, exercising intelligence in a kind of rational, cogitating mode, exuding agency, but as embodied, if differently directed, creatures in shared worlds. So in relation to the topic of intelligence and above and beyond consciousness, I attend to the ways in which digital or smart urban infrastructures are productive of these occasions of witness, how they induce or transduce particular types of participation, and generate very particular environments and computational worlds. So as I'm hoping to sort of emphasize here, although I'm not going to take it up in very much theoretical detail, I'm not working with a mode of intelligence that is necessarily a cognitive phenomenon. And it's interesting that you started with William James and this notion of the multiplicity of objects and relations, because he's very much looking at a mode of experience that is not reduced to the cognitive as such. And so I think when Steve Fuller yesterday suggested that we only use 10% of our brains, I think actually what James said is that only about 10% of our experience is in a kind of attentive mode, and everything that else is kind of going on is in this sort of distracted, relatively experiential way of encountering things, and that those modes of experience can be distributed across humans and more than humans, so it doesn't need to condense in a notion of a kind of rational human thinking subject. So this is a point not only taken up by James, but also by Whitehead, Stengus, Shaviro, as well as Simondon in a different way. So this is a more expansive way of understanding intelligence that I hope to engage with here today, which is not to exclude the cognitive, but it's not to have the cognitive fully stand in for what counts as intelligence, or to fully capture what smartness might be. So that's a way of also suggesting, I guess, following on Simondon, that we can also recuperate potential capacities for what does count as human intelligence by not having such a reductive notion of thought. So Simondon also makes the point that an abstract technology is not simply a cognitive model that is implemented, but rather is a set of dynamic changes that occur in any given technocultural system to make possible concretization of particular technologies. So, hey. In considering the smart city as one such abstract technology, I suggest it is vital to attend to the specific environments in and through which specific smart cities are able to take hold as these instantiations of intelligence. So just to kind of do the formula of what the smart city is usually meant to be, usually it's kind of narrated as a set of networks and sensors that together form the smart city. And you get a diagram then that looks like this. This is from Labellium, the Spanish company. And there are often ways in which the smart city now is described as something that is maximizing efficiency, often to achieve economic growth, but this is also aligned with a very particular notion of sustainability often. And this is something I've written about previously to talk about how these are technical and distributed modes of governance using Foucault's notion of environmentality, which I update to talk about exactly this way of becoming environmental of media and becoming environmental of governance. So these are often seen to be quite automated, efficient, and seamless modes of governance that operate through particular modes of programmed intelligence, and is often sold through the notion that cities are at breaking points, that their infrastructures are overloaded, that with climate change, increasingly questions of resilience are at the fore, and so smart cities are meant to be a way in which to manage, adapt, and variously respond to these challenges in ways that the city is a kind of intelligent organism. And there are no shortage of examples of this, which I could cycle through for the next probably 3 days, but I won't bore you with that. Instead, I want to turn to a kind of discussion of a specific example of smart technology in London. So if you were to do even a notional survey of sensors and smartness in London, you'd find that there are a number of these technologies in place throughout the city, not least of which starting with smartphones, which typically have around 20 sensors in them, from humidity sensors, temperature sensors, digital compass, accelerometer, and more, which is something that can be used to coordinate citizens' engagement with cities, but also sensors are within urban infrastructure to make these more intelligent systems, from Transport for London to sewers to lighting systems, traffic signals, and more. So seeking to gain a more detailed understanding of how sensors and smart technologies unfold in environments, particularly in relation to sustainability objectives, I identified this one site in London, the Crystal, which is a Siemens initiative, and went to look at this as a particular instance of digital infrastructure. So the Siemens Crystal is located near the London City airports on the north side of the River Thames in a shiny spaceship hulk of a building situated in London's Green Enterprise Zone in the Royal Docks. And it rises as a kind of icon of both sustainable and futuristic urbanism. And it opened in autumn of 2012 as a model of this kind of way in which cities might be developed. So like most of London, the Royal Docks is an area of intensive development and ongoing real estate speculation. The Emirates cable cars pass overhead at this site were developed for the London Olympics. New housing and office developments circle the riverside grounds, and further developments are planned and proposed from the new Silvertown Tunnel to the expanded city airport to an over £1 billion Chinese development that's planned and underway for this area. So smartness is inevitably bundled into these ongoing plans and proposals for urban development and expansion. So on the particular day that I'm visiting the Crystal, I'm taking a technical tour of the smart and sustainable building. There's also meant to be a showpiece and centerpiece for a larger exhibition on smart and sustainable cities, which I'll say more about in a minute. But you could say even before I arrived at the Crystal, my journey across through several levels of smart technology, from planning my journey online with the London TfL search tool to provide real-time travel conditions, to receiving live arrival times from the Docklands Light Railway, or DLR, at the station, to the Oyster card RFID reader used to access transport, the CCTV cameras under whose watchful gaze I fell, and the automated driverless running of the light rail trains that transported me to the Crystal. And as I later learned from the technical tour, before I even entered the Crystal building, I had already entered the first of 4 levels of smart security by approaching the Site IQ bubble that surrounded the site, which is a field of cameras and motion sensors working through algorithms and video motion detection, or VMD, to parse whether I might be a suspicious entity, present at the wrong time of day, or incorrectly placed or shaped. And if I had met any of these criteria, I would have, the system would have been informed to track me and alert security guards to attend to my movements. But having passed through this layer of security, I enter through automated doors to sign in for a technical tour and am given a visitor pass and a smart card for the exhibition, so that everywhere I touch in keeps a kind of record and tracks my movements through the building. And I learned from the tour guide that the crystalline shape of the building is meant to respond to nature. The structure is supplied with a number of sustainable technologies, from a rooftop rainwater harvesting system, underground rainwater tank, extensive array of solar panels, and pipes to do ground source heat pumps and more. So sustainability and smartness are kind of enfolded in this digital urban infrastructure. All of these technologies are then watched over and coordinated by a building management system developed by Siemens named DeSigo, which monitors 11,000 points around the building through sensors. A sort of uber cybernetic control system, DeSigo controls the ventilation, lighting, heat, and much more by responding to sensor data provided by the building automation solution sensors located throughout the building. As part of the technical tour, I visit a conference room to learn more about DeSigo, which is projected from a laptop as it's accessible from any point in the network. And in fact, much of the operational oversight of DeSigo actually takes place not in London, but in Frankfurt, where Siemens is headquartered. And here you can see what the Frankfurt headquarters looks like. This is images on screens within the crystal of the Frankfurt headquarters. So scrolling through the DeSigo system, the tour guide selects a conference room on the second floor to zoom into. We're able to see the trench heating and chilled beams that are the basis for the heating and cooling of the building, as well as the 41 sensors that monitor this particular bit of infrastructure to ensure stable temperatures. From the DeSigo panel, it is possible to set points to change the temperature across the microclimates of the building, which of course you could do from Frankfurt as well, to turn lights on and off, to see if windows are closed or open, and to operate them from the building management system, to investigate motion sensors that may have been triggered, to observe activity levels in any office area, and to keep track of a log of failures. So DeSigo also logs in real time the amount of electricity being generated from the PVCs on the rooftop, which this particular day is around 3 to 6% of the building's electricity. And a weather station is also monitoring the local external weather conditions and sensing whether adjustments need to be made and so on. So algorithms are tracking the sense data to respond to conditions and adjust ventilation in order to maintain comfortable indoor temperatures. So this central automated system is a sort of system of systems, a tool for managing and monitoring the building that largely takes place free from human intervention. While this control system does not need watching over, it can be used remotely from any app, laptop, or PC to make adjustments. The building management largely takes care of itself, as it senses, adjusts, manages, and maintains a reasonably homeostatic environment. Emerging within this building are orders of smartness, the intelligence of an individual sensor multiplied through a distributed sensor network, and the intelligence of a sensor network multiplied through an automated building system that is self-regulating. Smartness becomes a matter of intelligent automation, of a cybernetic organism that is able to monitor, manage, and adapt to circumstances in real time. This self-regulatory capacity is not just a management tool and an ethos for the building, but also for the city, which as a Siemens exhibition would inform me, could benefit from these same self-regulating abilities of sensor networks, where the city itself might become a cybernetic organism. So within the building is this exhibition, Future of Cities, which I then go to investigate after my technical tour of the building. And this particular exhibition is advertised in the promotional literature as the world's largest exhibition devoted to urban sustainability. This is a highly technologized and managed version of sustainability, where technological solutions are presented as the key way to help the city balance considerations for the environment, economy, and quality of life. The exhibition begins in the Forces of Change Theater, where the megatrends of demographic change, climate change, and urbanization are explored as key factors that determine our future and are putting pressure on cities forcing them to adapt in new ways. So here's the recurrent narrative of cities at the breaking point, expressed not just by Siemens, but also by Intel, Cisco, IBM, and a host of other technology companies that are developing these smart city technologies and finding a way to kind of pitch them to urban governments. Cities are systems similar to natural ecosystems. The exhibition informs its viewers. And so automated feedback loops are a necessary way to ensure the regulation and management of these urban systems. So following on from this first part of the exhibition to the ground floor, the subsequent part of the exhibition focuses on creating cities, where importance is placed on understanding the overall system in order to manage and address buildings, transport systems, distributions of energy and water, which are seen to be the vital components of making a city work. There's a kind of way in which there are indicators or classifications of key parts of the city that are then points of management. And a central city icon is located in the center of the exhibition space to signal the importance of this overall view for achieving a well-designed city. And this abstracted urban scene appears in the form of a black tower coursing with an array of colored lights, where the city resembles computer circuitry neatly connected up and pulsing with activity. Here the city has been remade in electronic form in order to merge with current technological developments. And planners, as the exhibition text and book indicates, are also key to steering a city in the right direction. So in this part of the exhibition, it's possible to go on to play the game of the future city and put yourself in the shoes of a city manager. And the hypothetical scenario they have for playing the city game has 3.5 million citizens and $30 billion to administer. In the managing game, the player planner has 40 years and 4 critical areas to manage: power and water, security, transport, and finance. By adjusting these levers on a dashboard, a status menu indicates how well one is doing with the city management exercise and in addressing urban problems overall. So notably, every urban resource, infrastructure, and problem that is to be addressed must be quantified in order to be made computable. As the booklet managing the exhibition notes, citing ex-mayor Bloomberg, it's a bit of a reference here for urban informatics, I guess, and the stuff that work is involved with. If you can't measure it, you can't manage it. Urban life must be enumerated in order to be managed within this cybernetic system. But once measured, the city is meant to emerge as an easily pliable and modifiable system. Beyond this game of running your own city, there are displays on smart buildings, since buildings consume 40% of the world's energy, and the crystal is an example of how to manage these systems to reconfigure every part of infrastructure, energy infrastructure, water infrastructure, and more. And this is a way in which intelligence is then meant to emerge. And so just to give you a sense of this particular way in which this imaginary is unfolding, to show you a clip from this film. Do I have sound?
2:21 p.m., downtown New York. Sensors throughout New York provide information essential to its running and to keep people safe. This city is aware. Real-time information flows into the city cockpit. Data is integrated and visualized, enabling the city to run more efficiently. Traffic lights and information systems are adapted to allow traffic to flow smoothly. Citizens have a direct connection to public services and can participate at every level. This is a city that responds to the needs of its population. 4 p.m., Copenhagen.
So you can see in terms of this film, get back to my presentation there. Which is near the end of the Future Life Gallery. New York, London, and Copenhagen are presented around 2050 as cities where many advanced technologies have been implemented in order to achieve sustainability. And these future urban scenarios include vertical cities within cities that have sprung up to accommodate burgeoning populations, smart grids that respond to fluctuations in renewable energy supply by alerting residents to use energy during a surplus or conserve at peak times, and sensors that altogether make for an aware city, a seeing, hearing, thinking, feeling, living organism, as we've heard, that is able to respond intelligently to real-time information as it flows into the city cockpit. All aspects of urban life have been made sustainable, from parks to energy, transport, waterways, and even citizen participation, which receives automated feedback from governments, and the city responds to the needs of the people. The city also never sleeps, as it efficiently and automatically activates, restocks, recharges, and recycles during the night. So the smart city, as built and imagined, seems to sort of toggle in between this zone, instantiated in some ways as an imaginary of complete automation and of more fully self-regulating systems, but also not quite necessarily arriving at this imaginary of complete monitoring and responding to events. Sensors becoming networks, becoming smart cities, all appear to be on a trajectory toward an urban organism that acquires a kind of uncanny urban intelligence, where the city is managing itself as its own urban planner, architect, and engineer, all rolled in one. You could kind of question as well is, when does this smartness finally arrive? Because a smart city seems to be this ever elusive phenomenon to be realized. When does the city and its sensors and networks take on a life of their own to become fully automated processes? Smart cities projects seem to suggest that we're all waiting for the moment when the ideal form of urbanism is to arrive at this ultimated automated organism in a kind of Norbert Wiener way of suggesting that all sense organs might constitute individual and assorted automatons that are participating in this kind of larger cybernetic system of feedback. So these digital urban infrastructures are very much articulating then modes of withness, of particular ways of being with the city, of experiencing connectivity and relation, and are advancing particular ways of possessing and making worlds. And you can see here more of this sort of dashboard imaginary of how you might manage the city, although an ideal situation is where then the city is able to kind of undertake this itself. So leaving the crystal and its currents and future vision of the automated and smart city, I take the Emirates cable car across the river to North Greenwich, passing over the waste transfer stations and scrapyards, the bits of real estate in between an industrial past and still to be fully instantiated future. I sense a deconcentration of smartness, or at least this version of smartness, as I surface from the underground en route to New Cross in South London. Here, far from the sustainable smartness of the crystal, the connectedness, flow, and seamlessness of the city unravels a bit, where streets are clogged with traffic, housing stock is crumbling, and air pollution is a recurring problem. Among the dilapidated and disused phone booths, convenience shops, and ancient laundromats, I sense that the pacing of this area is less geared toward moving bodies according to some well-tuned and optimized circuitry, since the economies here are of a different and less privileged sort. How would an automated urban organism deal with this indelible aspect of urban life, that of difference and inequality? So a smart city is meant to join up structures, processes, mechanisms, and gadgets so that they function more efficiently as some well-timed machine. Various smart city developments put forward scenarios where the movements, timings, and circulations of bodies and systems will sync up more easily, where crowd control or shopping may be streamlined through apps and code and CCTV, where the city will operate in a real-time way, where the withness of bodies and cities will be advanced and without interruption. And this is achieved largely through particular strategies and tactics of measurement and automation, which operate or are meant to operate across different types and distributions of infrastructure, where a city dashboard or platform signals the many ways in which this automation is meant to unfold. And these infrastructural relations, sort of suggest in this notion of becoming environmental computation, are not even necessarily primarily human relations, since humans and human modes of intelligence as they're typically conceived are flattened in this relationality, not as exceptional actors or beings, but as one more parcel to move along, one more node of information, one more sensor actuator operation taking place in the city. In this galaxy of machines talking to machines, contra the city game and steering planner of the Crystal exhibition, It's not the human that would cybernetically govern the smart city, but rather a measured and automated system of control, where a human operator is one source of input, since the many protocols and terms of relation are written into the ways in which machines would then talk to and learn from each other and become interoperable. So this is a version of intelligence that smart city proposals advocate and instantiate. And part of the objective of this presentation is then to consider the processes whereby digital infrastructures become environmental and generate conditions of witness in the speculative and unfolding smart city. But by becoming environmental, I address much more than a process of spatializing digital technologies, since environments are not mere backdrops against which activities of humans or more than human entities unfold, but rather are involved in distinct processes of becoming and progressing along with entities. Environments are then the conditions in which particular entities may take hold. They ensure the success or the lapsing of particular entities and further conditions for invention. It is important to continue to extend these kind of environmental aspects of computation in these ways, since it enables a more dynamic and processual understanding of how computation unfolds in urban spaces. And these are situations of witness that further inform processes of participation. Much attention has been directed toward the ways in which digital technologies might activate distinct types of action and engagement, or by virtue of having information and being connected to a seemingly expansive, if hazy, community of fellow users, urban citizens can be better attuned to political projects. But I would suggest that there is much detail that is elided in this characterization of participation, since it assumes a rush to effective action that might never transpire. In fact, you could say it's a kind of rational way of understanding participation that very much depends on a kind of human and its kind of device. So by attending to the witness of participation, I suggest that these are kind of environments of collective action that also, in a sense, inform the possibilities for politics to unfold. And while most digital participation focuses on the empowerment of individual users and a kind of selfness, of doing it yourselfness and a mode of empowerment, here you can see that smart cities are in a way programming the possibilities for participation and the modes of witness that might unfold. So moving across these more abstract and concrete instantiations of the smart city, I've sought to kind of also examine in a kind of lateral way programs of participation as they emerge through these articulations of witness. DIY and smart urbanism is circumscribed in very particular ways in these smart cities. Control systems communicating with transport networks, CCTV performing video analytics for pattern detection, smartphone apps providing access to urban maps and services. In each of these examples, what in the smart city rhetoric would be described through narratives of optimization, facilitation, and efficiency are occasions of witness that express, constitute, and contribute to the ongoing formation of distinct urban individuations and inhabitations. How are we with the smart city, its infrastructure, its other inhabitants, and the many computational devices that would steer us when emphasis is placed on coordinating flows of movement so that stoppage, disruption, breakage, and jamming are minimized? What is the witness of a ceaselessly flowing city, of a city that never stops, and that in its automated efficiency continues to process goods, information, and waste in the small hours of the night? Smart city developments such as those underway and implemented in London raise the question of how modalities of witness are realized and how different registers of witness concretize along with these distinct approaches to smart technology. Our urban future is differently distributed depending on how close to the machine we are. Those that can speak to it in its language stand a better chance of counting and being taken into account as a relevant node in the network. Those who do not may find they cannot get a foothold in the world the smart city has made and possessed. Thanks very much, and also just to say thanks to the ERC for the funding that made this possible.